Good morning, friends, and also not so much friends. Whoever is watching this, I'm about to show you what's going on with my private prosecution against the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. I didn't do very much of a theatrical event as Mr. Traversy did. I wanted to respect the people in that office's privacy, so I didn't. I wasn't about to put them on the spot, so to speak. I didn't bring it to a police station because the police don't seem to want to touch it. Well, not the police, but I tried to report this to the RCMP, and the officer said that he'd call me back the next day, and he still hasn't called me back. So I'm just going to assume that they have decided that they don't want to do anything about it. So I basically took a few days to type up what I could and put together what I could to bring it to an actual courthouse. And it was just about as easy as renewing a driver's license, actually easier because, all I had to do was drop something off. So it's in there. It's up to them now to either take action or not. I believe it's up to the Crown to do something about it. As you can see here, this is my bitchy channel. If anybody wants, you'll most likely be on this channel to see to be able to see this video. I'm just going to show you that the search result is still available online. This was from my original video that I did. Hopefully that you can actually see it on there. You can go and watch that if you like. I'm not going to be playing it on this. Just a little clip of it just to show the original guy that found the search result in the first place. But as you can see, there it is. It's still here. Grenades and tear gas. Attention. Are you a business that can supply products and services in support of Canada's response to COVID-19? This was back in March 2nd, 2016. If this was a naturally occurring event, this is actually impossible. Otherwise, they knew about it ahead of time and they needed tear gas for the response to COVID-19, which is even weirder because how would they know that there's going to be a response to COVID-19 unless they had it planned? I don't know. I'm not quite sure, but it sure is suspicious to me, this entire event. I did my best. I tried to share this everywhere I could. I tried to get the attention of the convoy people by posting this on groups, and even side organizations that were at the convoy. They didn't even bother responding to me when I tried to say, "Hey, do you guys want like a real actual, or do you want to solidify? Let's work together." Again, I've tried to work together with people in order to be more effective and been rejected. I have no idea why this is happening. But I'm not going to sit around and wait and find out. So I just decided to take matters into my own hands because I'm not going to be separated from my family again. I'm not going to go through the same process again. And, I'm watching these videos from China. They're literally like leading their people like Pied Pipers. Like a Pied Piper. It's got like a video of this one guy. He's like bringing hundreds of people, if not thousands of people along this street to bring them to these little cubicles that they're putting them in. Like they're even worse than prisoners. It's even worse than prisoners. Like in these little tiny cubicles where like it's almost like they're in a dog kennel. So fuck that. And fuck your sketch bag plan. And I apologize to anybody that's sensitive to swearing, but it's just part of my vocabulary. So, that's just the way I talk. And especially if I'm a little heated, the swears do come out. So anyway, it's still here. It's still here. It's still online. And that's the main purpose of what I sent to them. The main purpose was the evidence that they basically knew about COVID-19 in 2016 and tried to hide it, because to delete it off of the government website is also like attempting to hide a crime, because I believe this is a crime. So, not only did they get caught with this, but they have also now been caught trying to cover it up. And that's, the same kind of theme that goes on over and over again when these people start to feel the heat. As you can see here, where is it? I'm trying to think of where that was. It was not this one. Sorry, I did wake up just not long ago, but I just want to get this done and over with so I can enjoy my holidays too. Oh, here we go. So this was a video that is also on my BitChute channel that you can see. The COVID-19 plus 5G plus human enhancement equals NWO equals transhumanism. This video basically was a guy showing.
Right, that's my screen. So I'm here in the World Economic Forum website, all right?
He's basically showing that that they had this big, huge chart that they supposedly all of a sudden made like in such a short time. And it had all these sketchy things on it, talking about transhumanism and stuff. And then when I went to check it after I found this video, the chart was still online, but it was missing the parts that this gentleman points out. And he points out the whole sketchy part about transhumanism and it all being under COVID-19. COVID-19 would be like the kind of structure that they can achieve all of these changes with. So they had already changed that. And now, even beyond that, they've literally erased the page. It's no longer there. I got a variety of videos here. I don't really know, like I can theorize what's going on at the top, but in the end, we can only see by how these people react to things. Are like sure like the WF is clearly reacting, but like whoever we have as potential controlled opposition, even in the way that they react to this, are they going to actually cover this, or are they just going to pretend I don't exist still? That's my question to them. I was just watching InfoWars last night talk about, or the other day talk about how, you got to get in there and you got to get in the field. So InfoWars, are you guys actually going to pick this up? Are you going to actually show this? Or because I'm critical of things I've been seeing, are you going to, hide like Rebel News has been doing? I've been trying to get a hold of Rebel News for years, but, the only thing they'll respond to me is to put me on their mailing list. How insulting is that, eh? Trying to help or at least get their attention, and they just put me on their mailing list just to promote their stuff. And even with COVID, like I had things happening to me and like they didn't even bother to respond to me. They just put me on their list. Anyway, as you can see here, the actual page, it's gone now. It's still there. If you go on the Wayback Machine, it's still there, but I don't have a keyboard, so I'm not going to type that in right now to show you. But it is still there. I had already done that earlier. As you can see, there's plenty of activity since 2020, that's for sure. And why'd you take it down? World Economic Forum. What's the point in taking it down? I thought it was such a great plan. Why do you guys keep hiding stuff? The UN's done this too for years. I'd be pointing stuff out on Twitter and then they'd like delete the page. It's up now years later, like 3 years later, 3 or 4 years later. But back then they basically erased the page so that tweets that I was making pointing it out would lead to nothing. So you're pulling moves on people. Then when they start to find out, then you just try and hide it and hope it does hope nobody figures things out. You know, like it's such a gross behavior from like these people that are in charge of or trying to change our entire world here. You know, like acting like sneak thieves, basically. So the whole thing is just so messed up. But I'm just gonna show you here what I entered in. I entered that video and showing that they tend to erase things. And again, the main focus here, especially, is the fact that the government of Canada knew about COVID-19 by name in 2016, right from their own website. So I'd like to see them explain that. So I guess I'm just going to read to you what I put in there as my own words of as what the charge would be potentially. I'm not a lawyer, you know, so I did my best to try and figure out what it might fit under in the criminal code. But anyway, regardless, I'm just going to read this. This is going to be long. It's about 11 pages long, so. And I'll read it back to you, so that way it's not just you sitting there reading. Or you could just mute me and and go along. Oh, I opened the wrong one, of course. Oy, oy, oy. This has been happening like this entire time. Every single thing that could potentially happen wrong, you know, like my computer is messing up or like my printer. Like when I went to print this thing off, it was like, it was so messed up. Like as soon as I went to print the actual, document, it like jammed in the printer. Like, you know, who knows? Anyway, I know it might sound a little melodramatic at times, but this is just how I type. And you know, it is a serious situation. So, you know, it's not like I shouldn't make it, sound, you know, good as well as I can. You know, I'm not some, you know, like extremely learned person. I'm self-taught mostly. So anyway, this is my interpretation is it is conspiracy to intimidate with seditious intent. If anybody wants to actually read the legal paper that I also put in there with this by Peter McKinnon, it talks about how our country used to have you know, measures in place excuse me, measures in place to combat communism. And it seems that over time it was repealed, our definition of seditious conspiracy in the criminal code. And the old definition of seditious conspiracy actually fits what's going on here. So I do have to make note of that it is kind of odd that, you know, like the actual description of it, and then they ended up doing a seditious conspiracy later on is quite the coincidence. It is not a light read, but if you want to get more of an idea of, or maybe if you are looking to fight back yourself, you know, that might be a good place to start. I believe they put it all, the definition, to common law. So it's kind of just, it has a wide berth, so to speak. I'm not going to get into all that right now. I just woke up. So I'm just going to get into reading this because I want to get it out of the way so that way I can enjoy the holidays coming up, at least as well as can be expected with everything else going on around me right now. But hopefully what this will do is, you know, this is my goal. I wanted to get this actual piece of evidence into the system. And I couldn't get into the system by sending to the RCMP. So I figured if I do it this way, and you know what, if if they frown on me even making this video or making it public, well, this is kind of unprecedented times we're in. And what else do you expect me to do? You expect me to just like sit here and hide and pretend and like hope nothing's going to happen as they just continually do this plan? Like, I don't know how many years it's been now. I'd have to like, look back to see like, how long I've actually been like, I don't want to say obsessed, but yeah, I might as well be obsessed, like fight or flight kicks in. If you realize that, the world that we're in isn't a great place, unfortunately, and there's really crappy people trying to do crappy things in it. And we're constantly getting lied to. Pretty much, I don't understand how some of these people in Parliament can call themselves honorable. It's just like a hollow title, in my opinion. They put it up there just like like you have to call them honorable, so it's presumed that they are, but they basically lie all the time, and they're pulling moves, and everything that pretty much everything that they're doing is like a load of BS, So I'm going to start off by reading this report that I wrote kind of frantically within a few days. Just basically outlining everything that I believe points to why this might be like a generational conspiracy to fundamentally change this country into what these people believe it should be. I believe that is a violation of every single Canadian, where they basically are doing what they will with us. Where is our self-determination? Where's our self-determination? Did Justin Trudeau say, "Oh well, I'm going to do all this, and that"? When you elect me? No, he didn't. He basically talked about a bunch of other stuff, as some politicians tend to do. So, I guess I'll just start reading this off here, and then I'll continue on after that. Conspiracy to intimidate with seditious intent. A report seeking justice for Canadians by Christopher Matthew Fresque. I am presenting to you today a private prosecution application with evidence showing that the Canadian government had pre-knowledge of COVID-19 by name on March 2nd, 2016, 4 years before the supposed naturally occurring pandemic started. This is not only evidence of pre-knowledge, but also evidence that they tried to delete the evidence, as I had to recover the search result from a website that takes snapshots of websites, which is named the Internet Archive, or otherwise known as the Wayback Machine. By the way, side note here, if anybody wants to donate to that website, I highly suggest you do, because without them, we wouldn't be able to have this evidence, basically. Their website is very much so invaluable for people that actually want to, take snapshots of things that are important online, because otherwise they just erase it. These people are in a habit of erasing things that are inconvenient off of the internet. And without the Wayback Machine, we wouldn't be able to find half of these things. We wouldn't be able to see when they do a 404 on their websites what it used to be. So anyway, in continuing, in the folder COVID-19 pre-planned contained in the evidence disk I have provided to you, you will find 2 videos that I created in February 2022. In the video entitled Grenades and Tear Gas for COVID in 2016, you will find the original video that a fellow Canadian created highlighting the search result that at the time was still on the Canada.ca website. In the 2 videos I have provided, you will also see me go through the process of how you can find the result for yourself. At this time, the search result is still available at this address. I believe that this, along with a string of other evidence that is still available online, along with the evidence provided by myself in the evidence disk, or will be provided by myself at a later date, will prove that there has been a conspiracy to intimidate the Canadian people with seditious intent. Each step in this conspiracy eventually leads to the further control by an outside entity of the country, such as the World Health Organization. In this particular case, if you look in the folder entitled COVID-19 plus 5G plus human enhancement equals NWO equals transhumanism, you will find that they had at one point a very detailed chart of this plan, which is now offline. Our sovereignty is slowly being eroded by means of false pretenses. Social credit scores and financial bully tactics to force people to behave in a certain way, much like communist China, has been planned to be inflicted upon Canadian citizens. I believe that it is a major threat to the freedom of every Canadian in this country. I will be including several files that I believe links our current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, to a potential generational communist conspiracy that will, or already has, use the UN as a way to fundamentally change this country into whatever they feel is a just world. As it stands, it seems our current definition in the criminal code refers to seditious conspiracy as merely writing about government overthrow. However, in the past, its definition most definitely described this scenario we find ourselves in. I am not a lawyer, but I am reasonably proficient in my comprehension of the law, enough to be able to understand it to some degree. I feel what we face here is almost unprecedented, so perhaps I could label this high treason. However, as I said, I'm not a lawyer, so for me to try to put a label on it by our current criminal code is very difficult. I would refer you to the attached legal paper entitled Conspiracy and Sedition as Canadian Political Crimes for further potential definition. I hope that you will not dismiss this merely by technicality based on my interpretation on my application. I hope that you, who will likely be more proficient in the law, will help me to place the correct term as opposed to using this as a way to dismiss the claims, for all our sakes. Why do I feel it's a seditious conspiracy? It seems to me, based off of reading the document Conspiracy and Sedition as Canadian Political Crimes, that at one point our country was vehemently opposed to communism. I believe that indeed order is disturbed and there may be danger in the land. Our media in this country takes talking points from a government-funded NGO, antihate.ca, which does cover some racist groups in Canada. However, it is also used as a tool to label political adversaries into the same category. It is also, in my opinion, a racist organization when it comes to those that might be considered old stock Canadians. Canadians that might protest against mass migration are pretty much labeled the same as literal race groups. Paradoxically, this NGO has avoided the fact that our government, led by Mr. Trudeau, has been hiding the fact that there are Nazi factions in the Ukraine, the Azov Battalion. This leads me to believe, even further, that this NGO is a politically biased group with no intent on actually stopping Nazis, and has been silent when it comes to the government's support and propaganda campaigns to raise money for them. This is a major conflict of interest, not to mention the fact that they associate with Antifa, which is an openly communist group. So, in the end, our media is taking talking points from an ideologically communist group that hide their affiliation behind the false pretense of being against hate. I have tried to confront Mr. Trudeau on Twitter about this, but for some reason my tweets are shadow banned, even though I am not actually saying anything that could be considered hate or vile in my wording. My words are simply inconvenient, I suppose. I can supply evidence of this as well, should you request it. No government, world or local, should be immune to public scrutiny, especially if they abuse the citizens of Canada, especially when they commit fraud, use intimidation, or forms of terrorism as a tool to subject Canadian citizens to harmful policies in the name of safety, security, or convenience, or other actions which eventually harm them and this country. The United Nations has stated that this is to be the final decade to eradicate colonialism by the year 2030. See attached clipping from the UN website in the evidence disc I will provide. What exactly do they mean by eradicate? Do they simply mean this country in its governmental form? Or perhaps, more maliciously, also the memory and history of its people who created it? They have used their loose interpretation of racism or slavery to tear down our historical statues, and this, combined with the plan to eradicate, seems to me a very purposeful deception to achieve a goal by using propagandized information to weaponize citizens as if a proxy force in the country to achieve a desired end. When South Africa was subverted by an underground Communist Party member, Nelson Mandela, they held a vote for the transition. Back then, minority was seen as a bad thing. The South African Dutch were seen as a minority in power and shunned by other countries and entertainment industries on this continent, much like we are seeing the attack on whites today. Whites in Canada, I believe, represent those whom the colony consisted of, primarily English people. White supremacy is a term they use, and I feel they have diminished us into a shade in order to erase our sense of identity. Calling us names for having any desire to remain a unified people in this country, to identify ourselves with it, or to maintain our heritage. White supremacy is a weaponized term that, if translated correctly, would be saying Canadians remaining any part of Canada and its future as a people in the first place is a bad thing. It mirrors the sentiment that was aimed at the South African Dutch back then. The South African Dutch today are but a shadow in the country that their forefathers created. Similarly, today, we, English Canadians, are seen by political activists as a form of evil in the country our forefathers created. What happened in South Africa was that a vastly outnumbered minority were overrun in a supposed fair and democratic system. A democracy, as opposed to a republic, means the majority rules. Is this the purpose of mass migration? Only about 80 or so years ago, the English people were a large percentage of this country, and now, in several generations, are set to also be a minority in power. Is it as simple as that? Using migration as a means to eradicate colonialism in all its forms across the globe? Who knows? But one thing is certain to me, that we as a people are subjected and terrorized by this ideological agenda. We are seen as less than human in the eyes of our supposed equal justice-focused human rights system and left-wing organizations. So much so that we are denied the ability to properly make claims in that system. Our human rights system does not even follow the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. As it stands today, it is more like a cherry-picked tool of leftist ideology. I have evidence of this as well that can be provided at a later date. Regardless of the intent of all this, we cannot be expected to have true self-determination if we are not made aware of what is really going on here. If it makes it to 2030 and then all of a sudden they come out with this agenda, they may act as if it's a new idea or perhaps a giant guilt trip. When in actuality, it seems that this has been a generational plot to subvert a people, a plot to force or coerce change as opposed to simply ask for it. I would like to believe, considering that I myself sympathize with the First Nation people and have advocated and protested on their behalf in the past, before finding out that my own people are being abused today, that we would make the right choices if given a fair chance. I tried to ask our human rights to be seen as a second nation years ago and was denied. I was told then that we are not seen as even having an ancestry here to claim abuse of. I was even hung up on by a supposedly unbiased lawyer in our human rights system. I was asked if I had built this country with my own two hands, when I said that we created this country as a people and asked that we also be protected in the same way. My statement of seeking equal justice was what had her hang up on me. With all this talk of equal in this country, the meaning of equal justice enraging someone who is there to enforce equal is surely a troubling sign. The UN and human rights in our country is agenda-driven and prone to ignoring violations of their own law in order to keep a status quo of liberalism, or more so, perhaps globalism. They do not apply human rights equally. They use it, just like in South Africa, as a tool to abuse certain peoples while using it to advance their social programs. There are ideologically biased peoples working in these organizations that will deny legitimate complaints if they happen to threaten their collective social ends. The UN itself is no longer a reputable organization, in my opinion, as it is now involved with this crime against humanity, along with the WEF and the WHO. Perhaps, at one time, this was a legitimate attempt at world peace, and somewhere along the line they have been hijacked by ideological interests. Alternatively, they may have been the tool of global conquest all along. This is yet to be discovered, but we will not be able to if we never take an objective look at their structure and slow infiltration of this country of Canada. I would like to believe that my people would do the right thing if they were told the truth from the beginning, to be able to choose their fate in a fair and non-manipulated way. I do not believe that we would have, at this time, been so cruel as to not even care about the fate of the First Nation. I believe that this deception in itself has created a far worse outcome than if they had simply just been honest. Instead, we get deceptive NGOs whose only purpose, it seems, is to back up this establishment's goals by painting everyday Canadian citizens as racists in order to subvert us from our own people's identity and connection to this country. This very plot in itself is more racist than they claim of us who protest this subversion. We are not the ones who are lying and racially profiling people in this country. Our race relations, for instance, is a facade of supposed equality when they only seem to focus on racism one way, as if there are only one people, the targeted people, my people, that can even be racist in the first place. This is a bold-faced lie and propaganda perpetrated upon us. All of this aside, I feel it is vastly important that we stop this deceptive crime in its tracks. This manipulation has caused more damage to this country than it is presented as having helped. It is just one factor in a giant conspiracy, but I feel it is necessary to show as well, along with the evidence I am presenting to you today. It will be a good way for you to see for yourself the one-sided approach we are and have been being bombarded with for many years now. What I'm trying to prove here is deception and a potential communist agenda. Justin Trudeau was heard on a hot mic stating, "I was put on this planet for this." It is my belief that he was literally born to be a player to end this country in a way, to continue the final blow that will eventually see us, as a people and as a country, be destroyed in a way. Not completely, of course, but perhaps much like South Africa. I shudder to think of our farmers here being hunted down in their own homes, as the South African Dutch must fear for themselves every day, if this plot is to succeed beyond this point. Invested interests collude with media to hide inconvenient truths from the public, lying in order to ultimately deceive the Canadian public with malicious intent, as this plot has led to massive trespass upon countless Canadians. The mainstream narrative about what happened in South Africa is much like our mainstream narrative about what is happening here in Canada. False pretenses of do-gooding to end racist policies were used and continues to be used as a veil to disguise the subversion of those people right out of their own government. Today, racism is alive and well in that country. Nothing was ever really solved, only a transfer of power. Some might say that South Africa today is even worse than before this transition took place. I have an example from the Truth and Reconciliation documents from here in Canada, where they mention the desire to have this happen here in Canada too. If I recall correctly, they said they would like to see a South Africa situation happen here. However, I will need time to dig that out from my collected documents. South Africa also had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission as well. It is as if They are using the very same playbook as back then in order to subvert us as a people out of control of our country and our own futures, and thus our own self-determination by use of deception and at times intimidation. If South Africa today is any example of where we are heading in this country, where the South African Dutch are treated as if a new form of apartheid, where they cannot get jobs because of their skin, are forced to live in racially segregated groups for their own safety, then this was never about solving racism, was never about solving racial segregation. Racism is just used as a tool in order to gain power. Once that power was transferred, massive abuse has occurred, far outshadowing mere separation. Racism and terrorism ends up being the norm, disguised as racial justice, when it is anything but justice. More so a form of racial revenge with seditious intent that used racial issues in order to subjugate the South African Dutch to perhaps worse conditions than people were rescued from. Deceptive revenge, as the points they make are bent truth, much like we see today here in this country, much like we see in other colonies, much like we see in the USA, and strangely much like we see today in Europe. History is re-envisioned, or perhaps tunnel-visioned, to suit their victim status as they victimize and abuse other peoples. Much like South Africa, Canada has also outlawed the Canadian Communist Party. Mandela was a member of the South African Communist Party. See folder for visual evidence. These groups went underground, yet still gained political success. If we compare the tactics of then to the tactics being used against us today, they are mirroring not only South Africa, but also Communist China with regard to the desired social credit system. Communism, once considered by Canada as a great threat, is here today, almost in plain view, just by another name. If you were to look back at our history in newspapers, you will see that our former PM, Pierre Trudeau, was very close to many of these communist figures of the past, as well as congratulating the Communist Party of China in official capacity. It would not be very hard to piece together the history of communist sympathy of our government officials, both today and yesterday. If the First Nation people can create an entire nationwide movement based on little to no evidence, blips in the ground with zero forensic study, and this that I present to you, solid evidence of fraud and intent to intimidate from our own government website, then this country is already lost, and we are in a communist dictatorship with no rule of law besides that which achieves their ends. Klaus Schwab has literally admitted on camera that the WEF, World Economic Forum, has penetrated cabinets and mentions Justin Trudeau by name. It shouldn't be very hard at this point to prove that there is a seditious relationship with this outside entity of Canada that have meetings with terms such as world or global government written on the wall behind them. This New World Order is no longer a conspiracy theory. It is now a conspiracy. Build Back Better might as well be a term that describes communist dictatorship. Justin Trudeau is on video as well, admitting how much he admires the basic dictatorship of China. They are so blatant and in the open about this at this point. It has had me question if this entire thing is not meant to be taken down, as if this entire thing is a show of sorts, like bad actors that are so confident in their global takeover that they no longer even hide it and boast about it on camera. I have tried to report this and other international crime to several agencies and to politicians to no avail over the years. It is very troubling to me that I, a pardoned ex-convict, has more resolve to seek justice in this country than top or former top members of our security infrastructure, as well as leadership in political parties or media here. This is the sad state of our country, where people who have the ability or connections shrink at the very thought of doing more than just policing or governing us. Shame. Shame on every single one of them who ignored me or even worse, mocked me as if crazy without so much as taking a look at what I had found. This entire string of events has literally taken over my life, has ruined my family relationships and friendships, amongst countless other Canadians who have been affected by this rogue government's actions. Terrorism in the name of sedition, lies, deception, and apathy by just about every agency in this country, from media, from healthcare, from political parties, from our security infrastructure. During the supposed pandemic, I was separated from my family in multiple ways for several years. I moved to be closer to them, to help recover from a long-term drug abuse, and I suffer from massive anxiety and depression, only to be separated from them and terrorized by these measures. It, to me, has felt like a form of torture to not only know that this is a power grab, but also be tormented by this government's actions. I have tried to plead with government officials only to be ignored entirely. I have tried to report this in multiple ways only to be ignored. I have coped at times in extreme ways, even to the point of self-mutilation. The scars on my face are a testament in themselves of how much this entire world-changing agenda has affected me. If health and safety has ever actually been the government's concern, then the amount of stress this has put on me over the years is surely not healthy at all. I believe our government is unaccountable for their actions and purposely avoid interaction to save their own selves. Their avoidance of dealing with the effect their measures have had on the Canadian people, including myself, under the guise of health and safety, is abhorrent, especially considering the possibility of it being a purposeful and pre-planned event in order to achieve some ulterior goal. I will not allow this crime to continue and separate me from them again if I can help it. I have around 5 years of collected evidence mixed in with a lot of other videos of news and theory. It will take me months, if not years, to fully sort and organize to present to you with a more detailed analysis. So for the time being, considering that time is of the essence, I feel it is important, not only for myself, but for everyone in this country and around the world, that this be exposed now, and at least the COVID aspect, as it seems to be a focal point of this power grab at the moment. We can figure this all out as we go, but an investigation needs to start, and clearly the spectacle that we see with hearings are non-effective, if not staged, in order to appear that we have a chance at victory, only to allow them to get away with these acts over and over again. To me, the avoidance of solid evidence, such as the discovery of the grenades and tear gas request by the government, makes me suspicious of the intent of these potential theatrics. This trespass against the Canadian people needs to stop ASAP, so that I and we can all get on with our lives, free of terrorism by our own government and activated fellow citizens. This evidence of pre-knowledge of COVID-19, as well as the need for tear gas as a response to it, leads me to believe that perhaps even the convoy itself is part of this ruse. The end result of Trudeau wins, that leftists are gleefully stating all over the internet, to me, screams conspiracy with intent to intimidate on a grand scale. Yes, barely any tear gas was used when Trudeau enacted the Emergencies Act, but let's not assume that no one is monitoring people such as myself or the original video poster that discovered the Canada.ca advertisement and decided to make appropriate adjustments to their tactics. If they had used tear gas at that event in Ottawa on a mass scale, it would only end up solidifying this theory of corruption even more. I actually have more evidence of this kind of crafted event by way of fake terrorism that has helped them to achieve policy goals, much like the COVID-19 agenda that is still used as leverage for policy today. It is mentioned very often by these young global leaders. However, I'm going to leave that for another date, as it could ruin my attempt here, as it is religiously and racially sensitive. However, if you end up wanting to see this evidence to help solidify this case, I will be happy to produce it for you. I have video of evidence of faked international terrorism that I have been trying to report for several years. at times even being scolded by a CSIS officer on the phone, repeating, "It was real, it was real, it was real." And then he hung up on me. That's not in there, but I'll add that. Without so much as examining what I had found. This kind of willful ignorance in agencies that are meant to protect this country, I feel, is a massive danger to our society. If our security structure, not only CSIS, are too worried about investigating corruption at the highest levels, then what use do they have other than being there for namesake or to simply police us? To allow corruption at this scale is a greater threat to this country than any one of us could ever achieve. In case the reader may be unfamiliar with this topic and moves to dismiss this as frivolous, much like others have seemed to have done in the past, I am including a collection of papers that were made available from the website nwodocuments.com in the folder Documents to Support Theory of National Threat to Population. I think it would be safe to say that although these entities purport to be changing our world for the better, it is more akin to a plan to enslave humanity as opposed to improving any of our lives. Some of these documents are more of a blueprint of control as opposed to what we are led to believe, that these outside entities are there to help us. Slavery is yet another violation of the UN's own law that they seem to be breaking. And these changes that are being forced upon us were never requested by us. No one has elected any of these people, and our leadership has not so much as mentioned a thing about them. A clipping from a UN document, 98th Plenary Meeting, 20th December 1960, which is located in the same file, reads, 1. The subjection of people to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. It is contrary to the Charter of the United Nations and is an impediment to the promotion of world peace and cooperation. 2. All peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. 3. Inadequacy of political, economic, social, or educational preparedness should never serve as a pretext for delaying independence. 4. All armed action or repressive measures of all kinds, I'll repeat that, all armed action or repressive measures of all kinds directed against dependent peoples shall cease in order to enable them to exercise peacefully and freely their right to complete independence, and the integrity of their national territory shall be respected. 5. Immediate steps shall be taken in trust and non-self-governing territories, or all other territories which have not yet attained independence, to transfer all powers to the peoples of those territories, without any conditions or reservations, in accordance with their freely expressed will and desire, without any distinction as to race, creed, or color, in order to enable them to enjoy complete independence and freedom. 6. Any attempt aimed at the partial or total disruption of national unity, I'll repeat that one again too. Any attempt aimed at the partial or total disruption of the national unity and territorial integrity of a country is incompatible with the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. 7. All states shall observe faithfully and strictly the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the present declaration on the basis of equality, non-interference in the internal affairs of all states, and respect for the sovereign rights of all peoples and their territorial integrity. Does this sound like we should be being subjected to outside alien force, including the WEF, which is now in a power position within the United Nations? To me, it sounds like at one point the United Nations was there to protect us. Now, it seems it is there to enslave us. There is nothing about this world molding that gives us independence or freedom. Our country and the UN itself, at this point, do not even follow their own rules anymore. One section of the Declaration of Human Rights is used and abused to the point of absurdity and almost weaponized via mass migration, just like how the implementation of LGBT as a human right violates the natural family unit. to the extent that it is being enforced, which was to be protected by the state, as it is a foundational group unit of society. Not to mention, clearly our territory is not respected or protected if immigration or refugee status is abused to the point of weaponization. One rule is used to abuse another, or even new rules are created to subvert the old. At one time, children were protected, and now it seems they are a target in multiple ways. Eugenics has taken precedent over human life. Yet we are to believe that disrupting all our lives and this intentional attack on our sovereignty is not actually the very opposite of what this document was meant to represent? This is also not to say that only the First Nation is to rule here, nor should we alone. That without any distinction, we should be able to enjoy complete independence and freedom, free from terrorism in the form of deceptive narratives and racism in the name of weaponized historical injustices. These repressive measures and propagandized attacks on us as a people are a violation of the very purpose the United Nations was supposedly meant to achieve. Not only just with COVID, but all of these societal changes this left-wing biased group have been pushing for years in this country. This article in itself shows that what happened in the name of human rights in South Africa as well is a bastardization of this agreement. So too will it be if the same intent for this country is to come to pass, and if the United Nations cannot follow their own rules, then why should any of us in the first place? So, unless the United Nations was lying to us in order to gain control, much like other communist takeovers have done in the past, then perhaps the United Nations itself has been subverted, and we are all being targeted for human enslavement by an alien subjugating force. People are free to speak about ending us in this country as countless people are brought across our borders and into our towns under false pretenses. Perhaps it's not even about rising the First Nations alone into power. Maybe it's just a matter of removing us altogether from any influence here regarding our own future and well-being that is similar to South Africa in its intent. Regardless of the future plans, the true systemic racism today is perpetrated by our own government and its NGOs themselves, all while they purport to be being constantly attacked by this Canadian supremacy that threatens these new colonists, which is actually similar to the very struggle of the First Nation in the past. In conclusion, many things that are happening here echo our past with regard to the implementation of the War Measures Act, as if plans that are easier when repeated. I also find it very suspicious that this event mirrors the one in the USA in many ways, as if some kind of bad movie with bad actors. But the plot remains close to the same. This is only theory, of course, but in the end, to discover truths, we must first theorize and also question everything. So my question to you, the reader, are you satisfied with what we are being presented with? Will you rise to the occasion and seek justice here? Or, like others before you, shrink in the face of adversity? I surely hope that you rise to the occasion for all our sakes. Thank you for your time and consideration. Yours truly, Christopher Matthew Fresque. So that's my report. It's just basically what I could put together at the time, in the time that I had, because the way things are accelerating here, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe in this country. In China, they're leading people into these little cubicles, these little tiny cells, like they're dogs, where they've got these little hatches that open. I don't want that here. Like these people are setting up camps, like concentration camps. So it's either get this into the system or sit here and hope nothing happens. And what has that ever gotten us? So I took the plunge, so to speak. This is the evidence folder that I put on the disc that was presented to them. Let's start here. Maybe one of the more interesting ones. Communism then and now. I believe that they're pretty much lying about Trudeau's lineage. Because, there was all these different articles that were like, just kind of shoved down everybody's throats at the time, that people were speculating, just countless, over and over and over again, the same statement. No, Fidel Castro is not Canada PM Trudeau's father. And it went on and on and on and on and on. But the thing is that they're lying. And you know what? If you want to hide, some inconvenient truths about your family, I could understand that, but not when you're trying to run a country. Do you think these people would have actually voted for you knowing that you were Castro's son, a communist? I don't think they would have. I think the Canadian people would have been like, heck no, we're not going to do that. And here's the thing. And even Snopes they're liars. They're just like anti-hate, where they're basically like political agents that use their position and abuse it. Because even though the Snopes report says that his mother wasn't even there between March 16th and April 22nd, 1971. It says that there was no way, because she wasn't even in the area. But guess what? She was. Right in the time that they said. Trudeau's privacy respected. Bridgetown, Barbados. Prime Minister Trudeau and his wife left here Monday by chartered plane on a quick side trip to an unidentified nearby island. They arrived here Thursday on a brief second honeymoon, and have reportedly been staying at a private residence on the island's posh west coast. Heavy security measures have been in effect since their arrival, and the local press was asked to respect the newlyweds' desire for privacy. A government spokesman said Trudeau was due back in Ottawa Wednesday to prepare for the reconvening of Parliament. Here's the full page. From the Ottawa Journal, Tuesday, April 13th, 1971. Right in the window that Snopes was saying wasn't, or had to have been in the area. Trudeau's privacy respected. And this wasn't the only time Mr. Pierre Trudeau was in the area secretly. Well, obviously, since there was a newspaper article documenting it, it wasn't as secret as his trip to the area a year before that. These are from a folder that was released, I believe, by the FBI. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It was a while ago, but it was entitled The Trudeau Files. Here we can see that that Mr. Trudeau was traveling in around the area and wanted complete secrecy. This was from the FBI at the time. I'll just flip through these instead of reading each one. You can read them for yourself. I believe Mr. Hoover was in charge of the FBI at that time. I'm pretty sure too that they were saying that he wasn't around the area too, but that'll be something you guys can try and dig. I highly suggest you go and look in newspaper archives. Figure these things out for yourself. That's the best way. You can't take these people's word on it, just because it's a supposed official source. It's the same game with COVID, you know. Oh, officials or experts or blah 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 blah. They just use these things to lie to people. Oops, I accidentally put a double in there. That's the same thing. It's the same showing of the articles. Several articles, like hundreds of articles of the same title. Like imagine like what they have to do to actually have like the exact same title on like all those different news sources. And you know, this is people trying to figure this out back in 2018, I believe. And you know, like I mean, the picture evidence itself is compelling enough, let alone the the evidence that they're lying because the newspapers. And unfortunately, Fidel's son, other son, nicknamed Fidelito, committed suicide, and in his suicide note, he said that he was always that his father, Fidel Castro, was always comparing him unfavorably with Justin, dismissing his accomplishments in comparison to his success in Canada. But what was I to do? I am Cuban. My brother is Canadian. If he was born and raised in Cuba, he would have lived in our father's shadow forever, just like me. So, you know, as sad as this family dynamic is, you know, and I actually kind of feel for Justin to you know, have that kind of emotional baggage to be carrying around. But you know, it is also linked to the trespass against all of us potentially. So in the end, you know, I don't have that much sympathy. You know, in the end, even though you were born into it, you know, you're still messing with all our lives. You've pretty much destroyed my life, as well as countless others. So, you know, the sympathy is lost to me. And here's another thing that's interesting too. I think I might actually put these files online, available to be downloaded too, just so that way you guys can go through them yourself. Because you know, for me to go through every single one, I just want to get this video out, but just for safety purposes too, you know. But you know, you remember the whole blackface thing. I don't think this is actually to do with racial insensitivity, because let's just say that Justin was told when he was young about what his plan was to be, like what the plan is. You know, they have pictures of him going to the UN and taking official pictures, and he was in like a astronaut suit or something like that. You know, like to assume that nobody was like, you know, kind of training him to be in this position, I think would be foolish. But here's my theory behind why he was doing this, almost as if to mock people. Because this is a statue in Cuba of Lenin, blackface. Interesting, no? And here's another file from the Trudeau files, of newspaper articles and the FBI talking about, at least I think it was the FBI, talking about Pierre Trudeau's concerning links with communism. I'm not going to go through every single one of these. I'll just show it. I'm not going to read through it all. I've probably taken up a lot of time with reading my document. Maybe if I have time after, I'll go through it a bit more. But yeah, it's surely points to Pierre Trudeau having some serious communist ties, and is quite troubling to people back then. So all of this leads me to believe, like, do you think that Pierre Trudeau wasn't telling Justin, like about his communist plans or how good communism is or whatever, or how he can do, training him from a young age on how to act in a underground communist way, because they have to be underground, right? They can't actually say, yeah, we're the Communist Party anymore. So it has to be all kind of hidden, They even called him in a newspaper here the Canadian Castro. And if we're looking at everything that's happened, like, all these people that say, oh, communism's great. I don't find it so great. Enslavement isn't great. It's not a good thing. And heaven forbid, what could happen after this? If you look at the history of communist takeovers, it doesn't end up so well. Oh, look, they even mentioned the UN here. It doesn't end up so well for the people that are against communism. Like, who knows if that's actually the direction they're going, but it is surely gearing up to that way. The whole demonization of us, anybody that is against them, the whole, even the stuff with anti-hate, like saying that we're all a bunch of racists and all this stuff. It's like, it's dehumanizing us to the point that, do you think that the people that are pro-mask and all that have been harping on us for the last few years, wishing for our deaths already with regard to COVID, wouldn't, be totally fine with pretty much just getting rid of us? In Canada and China, like, look at the connections back then. It's not ridiculous. It's not crazy for me to put these things together. It's actually crazy for people that are being ostrich people, unable to critically think about things or even bother to look into things like this. We got people in this country that are pretty much like sitting there with their own selfish asses, only worrying about themselves, spending like little to no time at all looking into anything, and just being their woke, ignorant selves. I don't even have words to describe how messed up that is. How, like, morally corrupt it is, to be so lazy and then to just like go, yeah, you guys are all just nasty conspiracy theorists when you're literally just concentrating on yourself, not giving a crap what happens to anything. Oh, but they do care about all the next things. Anything that this government puts out, they go, oh yeah, look at how virtuous I am at pushing this next government narrative, because they feel confident in having the backing of this corrupt government. It's sickening. It's sickening, the state of this country and the state of some of our fellow Canadians who like literally have done nothing but do things for themselves while they're lecturing others for bothering to stand up and do anything about it. Here's a picture of Antifa back in World War II era, clearly connected with communism. Now, these are the people that are advising our media on hate. Now, you don't have to be a Nazi or a National Socialist to be against this either, eh? You can basically just point it out and say, this is messed up. This is organized communism that's pretending to be against hate. So everything that's not us, everything that's not our communist dictatorship is hate. What a false and misleading premise. And here's Here's Mr. Mandela with Castro. Cuba gave them a lot of support back then, you know. And look at South Africa today. What did these guys do that was so great? Sure, they stopped apartheid, but now it's just apartheid again. So it's just racial revenge and a power grab in the end. Yep. Communism. When they made it illegal, they had to go underground. And all of our leftists today might as well be communists in disguise, as far as I'm concerned. And here was just basically, I happened to find this on the day that I was creating this folder. The website is called nwodocuments.com, and it has a collection of all the documents that might pertain to what's going on here. I put that all in there just in case they try and say, well, there's not enough evidence to show that there's an actual, plot to change anything. Well, I put a whole bunch of evidence in there for you. There's plenty of documents to go through to show potential intent. And I also put in there the copy of the plenary meeting of the UN, which might as well be attached to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There's a video in here that the guy.
Let's continue to explore what the Great Reset has in store for us through biodigital convergence. What new capabilities are opening up? Monitoring, altering, and manipulating human thoughts and behaviors. Nanobots that will operate and precisely deliver drugs within living creatures. Artificial intelligence that can help design microorganisms with specific characteristics. So they'll create new species, which is talked about elsewhere in this document. Changing and eradicating entire species is a new capability opening up. Altering the natural environment at scale. So we're talking terraforming. And probably just pausing it and reading is blurry and inefficient. Just go to nwodocuments.com and you can read this there. And I have it summarized as well, so you don't necessarily have to go through the whole thing. Also, turning organisms into biocomputers. That's another exciting part of all this. They also mention the ability to create food and engineer meat without the need for arable land. Lab-grown meat, cells that develop to produce muscle cells, and cultured meat in a monitored environment could be a game changer in decentralizing multiple industries from farming to shipping. Is that why Mr. Gates, who is heavily invested in these synthetic food technologies, is buying up all the farmland maybe? They say that you can create food and engineer meat without the need for arable land, so seems to be a good clue. Unfortunately, as good as all that sounds, there is a drawback. The technologies and applications featuring biodigital convergence will not be able to operate without a lot of data. That is unfortunate. Sorry, this is hard to hold up backwards when it's got the inverted feature on. Bioprospecting is already an important aspect of drug development and may rise in importance and provoke greater controversy in healthcare. The full potential of biodigital convergence may therefore require a constant flow of data. Well, that is unfortunate. We want to make your life better by creating new species and terraforming the world and controlling your thoughts and feelings and behaviors. But unfortunately, we will need to surveil you literally from the inside out, surveilling every last aspect of your entire life. Small price to pay, though, to subjugate you, right?
Do you remember voting for this? Did Mr. Trudeau talk about this? Did he say, hey guys, we want to, start all that stuff? No, I don't remember that at all. Pretty sure he didn't. Here's just a small example of their organization. Everybody was saying Build Back Better on the left. You know, young global leaders. It's an infiltration. That's the sedition. That's the conspiracy part of the charge. You know, this is a conspiracy to fundamentally change the country from the organization that was supposed to protect our countries. Clearly, there's something wrong here. And the very people that are meant to have protected are now its destroyers. And this was just a folder with some things that I collected over the years, or several years ago, regarding South Africa. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just upload these two, and I will put it in the link description, with the video that I'm making here. You know, what a nightmare to be living. These poor kids are all from a segregated community that they've had to basically put themselves in for their own safety and to, you know, take care of each other. While their farmers are literally hunted in their own homes in this country. And our media has done its best to try and say that's just a conspiracy theory. Like, when are these lying people ever going to get any justice to come at them? You know, you can literally, our country is constantly talking about, oh yeah, we got human rights and we got to be nice to people and all this other stuff. They only want you to be nice to their goals. But when it actually comes down to humanity, they have no sympathy for that. They don't care about humanity. They only care about the humanity that gets them power. Because when it comes down to actually, you know, fighting for all humanity, well, they're inept and left wanting. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it at this for now. I did enter this into a court system in Ontario. I do have a video of that, but it's, you know, it's uneventful. I pretty much didn't show any of the people, but like I just did it just as a security purposes, to make sure I have evidence that I did enter this document and everything in there to the court. So it is in there. It is now up to the Crown. It is now up to the Crown to either proceed or not. And you know, it's very possible that they'll try to just put the kibosh on it. So we'll see what happens. I know I actually have no idea whether or not what I'm doing right now is bad, but frankly, it's certainly not as bad as what they've been doing. Nobody here wants to be a slave. And if any of the people that do probably don't even know what the hell they're even talking about. And they're probably like the people that I was talking about, the wokies that, you know, spend little to no time actually looking into this stuff, or give little to no care about anything other than things that get them ahead in life. You know, I've said recently, you don't have to be religious to sell your soul. All you have to do is basically not have a limit on what you will accept in order to gain for yourself. And with that, I will say good day, and we'll see if I make some videos further down the line here. But for now, I'm just going to take a long deserved rest and try and enjoy the holiday. And please do share this. Share, even if you only have a few followers, every little bit. If we like, that's the thing, man. I'll get into this later, but I've been trying to, quote unquote, where we go one, we go all, this entire time. I've been trying to work with people, and everybody wants to be a hero, and they don't want to actually like collaborate to all have a unified voice. You know, So like, you know, if you're all like trying to put a show on to show how much of a fucking hero you are, you know, and you're literally trying to stop other people from even exposing things, or trying to do it all yourself, having taken ideas from people, you know, like who the hell are you kidding talking about wanting to fight for freedom for people in this country? You know, I was the one that came up with the idea. I know that a class action lawsuit isn't original to me, but I was the one that wanted to start a class action lawsuit in 2019. And the people you saw come out basically just kind of pretended I didn't exist and stopped talking to me. Norman Travesty didn't actually speak to me in the first place, but like that's another story that I'll tell later. But I'm thoroughly kind of sick of our so-called patriots in this country too, because, you know, like, do you guys actually want to win? Do you want to win? I don't care if you only got a few people on your profile. Every little bit counts, and we can all work together to get this stopped. If you guys want to take this information and start something else too, go for it. Do it. Just give credit where credit is deserved. I'd also like to give credit to the gentleman here. I have to look for. How's it going? And I came across. Sorry, I don't have. This video is also on my BitChute as well. I don't have Jimmy. I think that's a F-A. I can't read that. It might be Jimmy Talk, but it's hard to read. It's kind of blurry. But sir, if you are out there, this was originally your find, and I give you credit for that. And people should also support this gentleman. But what I did was dig it out of the website or the Internet Archive and then take action on it. So, I mean, you know, give credit where credit's deserved. Don't, you know, push people aside, other patriots that are trying to fight this too, just because you want to take the limelight or you know, or looking for a name for yourself for maybe your future political ambitions or whatever the hell you're trying to do. It's really gross. And I'll just leave it at that for now. I'll make another video later talking about some of the experiences I've had over the years here. But that'll be for later. Have an amazing holidays, my fellow Canadians.